Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome in the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and coming up on today's show, we're going to be deep diving into the Vikings' playoff chances after things just got very interesting last night because of the Philadelphia Eagles beating the Green Bay Packers. So, shout out to the Eagles. That was a pretty much a not a must-have game for the Vikings' playoff chances, but it definitely increases their odds here. And also, shout out to the Eagles. They got Packers fans wanting to fire Matt LaFleur after last night's game. Instead of admitting that maybe their franchise quarterback, Jordan Love, may not be as good as a lot of these Packers fans have initially thought, no, it's the head coach's fault. They're over there blaming Matt LaFleur. So shout out to the Eagles. Got Packers fans in complete shambles right now. So the first time ever, me giving love to the Dirty Birds there in Philadelphia. But let's take a look here at the NFC playoff picture. As you see, the Chicago Bears rocking that 6th seed right now, and the Green Bay Packers still in the 7th spot. But the Eagles, number 1 team in the conference, through the tiebreakers against the Seattle Seahawks. Detroit Lions still at number 3 with a 6-3 record. Same with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming in at 4. Then the other teams in the hunt: San Francisco 49ers at 6-4, Carolina Panthers at 5-5, then the Minnesota Vikings at 4-5. Now, according to ESPN, the Vikings right now have a 7.1% chance to make the playoffs. We'll dive into the New York Times playoff predictor, but they have the Vikings at an 11% chance. But chances to win the NFC North, 1.3%. The only chance the Vikings have to win the division is if you go 6-0 and you hope that the Lions and Packers drop a couple of games that they're supposed to win. And then also chance to make a Super Bowl, 0.3%. But this was all coming in from ESPN. So they got them at 7.1. New York Times have the Vikings at 11, but I want your guys' thoughts on this. What is the percent chance the Vikings make the playoffs? Scale it for me 1 to 100 down below in the comment section. Right now, probably in between. I'll probably give the Vikings a 10% chance. You can obviously root for other teams to lose. Most likely the Vikings are going to probably have to win 6 of their next 8 games to make the playoffs. So we'll discuss how here in just a second, but you guys let me know your thoughts down below. All right, so the Vikings, I think, are in a 3-team race to get the last wild card spot. So I'm going to give the Packers here the benefit of the doubt. I think they're going to still turn it around. That tie also makes it very, very weird in terms of just making the playoffs for the Vikings. But, you never know. If the Vikings can beat the Packers twice, maybe the Packers don't make the playoffs. But I do think it's a 2-team competition for the Minnesota Vikings for that 7th seed. And that's being with the San Francisco 49ers and the Chicago Bears. Now, we're going to dive into each team's schedule here and just kind of discuss how likely it is, because obviously we know the Vikings have a very tough schedule. You got the Bears at home this week, then you're on the road taking on the Seattle Seahawks, on the road taking on the Green Bay Packers. Now you do have 3 gettable games against Commanders, Cowboys, and Giants, but then you close the season off with the with the Packers and the Lions at home. But pretty much this week, it really does all come down to this. If the Vikings lose this week to the Bears, the season is over in terms of your playoff chances. Now, I do think the Vikings season would still be interesting just because of the fact that you got to see what you have in J.J. McCarthy, but all the playoff hopes will pretty much be squashed if you lose this week to the Bears. And the Bears' remaining schedule, it is tough. Like, the Bears haven't beat a good team so far this season. Their combined record of the teams the Bears have beaten are 15-41-1, so they haven't even sniffed a good victory so far this season. So they got the Vikings on the road, then the Steelers, then the Eagles, and the Packers, Browns, Packers, Niners, and Lions. Now, I think if you're looking at the Bears here, you got to hope they go 9-8. So you obviously beat them. That's another loss. Probably going to beat the Steelers, but you're going to probably have to have them lose both road games, week 13 and 14. So that's 3 more losses. Lose to Packers again, lose to the Niners again, lose to the Lions again. Maybe the Bears. Listen, the schedule is tough. Like, there's no guarantee the Bears, even finish above 500 here, but they have a very hard schedule. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, the Niners' schedule is an absolute joke. They get the Cardinals this week on the road. Could be a tough spot. Still think the Niners will win that. They got the Panthers on Monday night. You're in Cleveland. You have a bye week, and then you get the Titans at home. A bye week into the Titans at home. Schedule makers, are you serious? That is probably the easiest, marked up win remaining here for any team on their schedule. And then, the last 3 games for them, you're in Indianapolis on Monday night. That's a tough game. You got the Bears on Sunday night. This game will be absolutely huge for the Vikings, but obviously the Bears and the Niners. But then they got the Seahawks at home. So the Niners, very easy schedule. And then the Bears have a very tough schedule. But I do want to look here at the New York Times playoff predictor. So producer Dylan on the 1s and 2s here. We'll kind of just walk it through. So I think you have to pretty much guarantee if the Vikings want to make the playoffs, you got to win this week. So we're giving them the win against the Chicago Bears, and that would up their chances from 11 to 16. Now, you're in Green Bay and in Seattle. we're going to go a little optimistic here. We're going to see the Vikings beat the Packers in Green Bay, get them to win there. Right there, you're at 33%. Probably going to lose to the Seahawks. You're going to mark that up as a loss. And then you got to beat the Commanders at home. That's going to be a win on the Vikings schedule. That jumps them back up to 30%. Then you're going to have to beat the Cowboys on the road and the Giants on the road. So you're going to have to win both those games if you want really any chance here. So we'll mark up both those as a win here for the Vikings. Jumps it all the way up to 64%. And then let's just say here you split against the Lions and Packers. Who would I rather beat? Give me a win over the Lions and a loss versus the Packers to close out the season. And if that happens, you got an 81% chance to make the playoffs. Now, I do want to play a hypothetical here. Dylan, if you just want to change that Packers, the first game there, to a loss, because, again, going on the road in Green Bay, drops you down to 15%. So the Vikings pretty much only have 2 more losses available for the rest of the season. But, Dylan, let's just do something here real quick. Give them a win, like back against the Packers next week. So it jumps them back up to 81%. And then give them a win against the Packers to close out the season. So the Vikings would go 6-0 in the division. Let's just chalk up a random loss. Let's just call it to the Cowboys on the road and go from there. Still 91%. Now, have them lose to the Giants on the road. All right, so it goes to 33%. So you still have an outside chance. So I was just kind of curious how that would play out. But pretty much the Vikings only have 2 losses to, kind of play with here, which is obviously fighting an uphill battle. You got a 10% chance to make the playoffs. But again, if you could just somehow beat the Bears, beat the Packers, you're probably going to lose to Seattle on the road. But again, anything is possible. Like this is, I think, still a feisty football team. I'm just not really too sure. You're pretty much going to have to get to 10-7 to make the playoffs. So you guys let me know. Predict the Vikings record for me down below in the comments section. I think they're going to be probably 9-8. I think they're going to probably finish this season 5-3. 10-7 is a little rich, but you guys let me know your thoughts. Predict the Vikings record in the comments section. Now, we'll discuss more about the playoff picture here in a second, but before we do so, got to tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. Shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's show. And if you guys plug in that promo code CLNS, we'll hook you guys up with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Now, the hard-hitting football action is even better with Prize Picks, and the weather might be changing, but the feeling of being right never gets old. And Prize Picks is the only app that offers stacks. You can pick up to the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. If you guys want to pick more on Josh Allen's pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns, I can pick all of them in the same lineup only on Prize Picks. You guys can also follow other Prize Picks players directly on the app and copy their lineups in one click. Whether it's a friend, celebrity partner, or to someone whose picks you like, hit that follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on Prize Picks. So download the Prize Picks app today. Plug in that promo code CONS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CONS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's show. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, so I do want to go over some hypothetical here's and discuss the tiebreakers because that is very much on the table. Obviously not with the Green Bay Packers because they have that one fluky tie, but let's just say they are tied with either the Bears or the Niners. It would obviously start off with the head-to-head. So if the Vikings beat the Bears this weekend, they'll have that. And also against the Bears, if you beat them this weekend, you probably have the second tiebreaker as well, just a win-loss record within the division. But when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers, we start at tiebreaker number 3, and that's the best win-loss percentage in the common game. So you start looking at, the Niners are playing the Bears this year. Like, if the Niners lose to the Bears and the Vikings beat them twice, that would be big for, the Minnesota Vikings. But there's not a lot of common games. So then you go to, the conference tiebreakers there. And, Vikings, some of their big losses have came, to obviously the Ravens, the Chargers, Steelers. So, the Vikings, if they somehow get the 9-10 wins, you should have a good record within the conference. And it's just strength of victory in all games. So how the Vikings make the playoffs? It's not that crazy. This is probably the craziest part, though, is the Niners somehow getting the 10-7 because their schedule, right now, I believe the Niners are 6-4 right now. So them getting the 3 more losses, you're going to have to hope they lose to the Cardinals this week, lose to the Colts on the road, and then lose to the Seahawks at home. That gets them to 10-7, probably their best chance. And again, that's just everything goes perfectly. So listen, I understand it is very early still in the NFL season in terms of looking at the playoff picture and everything, but it is truly time to start rooting against the 49ers and Bears every single week. Um, every single time you see these teams playing out there on TV, you got to root against them. And honestly, I still think, though, from the Vikings perspective, just kind of focus on your own. Like, just focus on getting a win because you're going to have to rip off 6-2 over the next 8 games to make the playoffs. So really, you to have any chance whatsoever. So 6-2 over the last 8 games. That's where the Vikings are looking at here. But you can't start rooting against the 49ers and Bears every single week. But it starts this week against the Chicago Bears. Must-win game. So if you guys want the Vikes to beat the Bears, hit me with those SKOLs down below in the comments section, and we'll get on out of here. As always, SKOL Vikes.